Hey everyone, welcome to today's special episode of the Senstennial podcast. And I'm very excited to welcome on the show again, Graeme Nichols. Graeme, how are you doing lately?
Not too bad, Matt. How are you?
Couldn't be better. I may seem a little, what do you want to call that? Maybe slow right now, lethargic, but very excited for the Sens to be back in the playoffs. Sadly, I missed the episode with the other guys when the Sens clinched and we recorded, but, uh, you know, that's okay. Very happy to be here today and have you on the show. We can talk all about
Yeah, no, it's exciting times, man. So I'm excited to jump on with you. Although the other guys I miss Matt and Bennett. So
it. I'll pass that along. But exciting news is that officially Ontario will have the Battle of Ontario after a long 21-year hiatus. So when the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Buffalo Sabres, what were your thoughts on the Battle of Ontario returning?
I don't mind the matchup. Like obviously, first and foremost, that's what I think about. I think it's such a departure from, like you mentioned, the 21 years. I think it's such a departure from that era. And I think like a lot of younger Senators fans don't necessarily I a lot of fans don't like Toronto, obviously, provincial rivals and everything else. And like you can go to a Leafs, or sorry, you can go to like a Sens Boston Bruins game, and all of a sudden like a Leafs suck channel breakout. So obviously there are like those. I don't want to say insecurities, but there is that understanding that like Toronto is the most hated rival of the Senators, so there is that component to it. But like, I mean, it's we're so far removed from like the early 2000s, late 90s that there just aren't that many connections left. Obviously, you have Travis Green who played for the Leafs on that side of it. Obviously, you have Daniel Alfredson who's an assistant coach now. Stuart Leader is still involved in the organization. You have Chris Phillips and Chris Neal, but I mean, there aren't that many connections to that era of Senators history, but there are some, and it's good. I think like you need good rivalries in hockey, and I think looking at the Atlantic Division matchups, whether it's Florida and Tampa playing first round or Ottawa and Toronto, it's what you want. It's what sells hockey. It builds just a natural rivalry that's been dormant for way too long, and it's good. It's good when like provincial teams or teams that are in close proximity have a chance to play each other in playoffs because I think it brings out the best in those teams. And I think it brings out the best in the fans, and we'll say it's
Oh,
exciting.
wow.
We'll see.
uh,
We'll see. But I'm excited. I'm excited.
well, as a couple people have pointed out on social media, this is the first time that social media will be dominant in a Battle of Ontario. So that could be quite toxic. We'll have to see. But for myself, like I only moved to Ottawa when I was a youngin. So this will actually be my first Battle of Ontario that I get to watch live for the playoffs. Because at that time I wasn't really an avid hockey watcher. Growing up, my dad was a big football guy. So it wasn't until I moved to Ottawa and the grandparents started taking me to games that I got into the Sens. And I would say that probably wasn't until like '06, '07. So yeah. And I guess that was a good time to get into Sens fandom. But yeah, so this will be very exciting, I think. And I think it's already generated a ton of interest on social media, of course, in general in the media. Everybody's already pumping out articles about it, doing comparisons to the teams last time they played. As you mentioned already, with like Travis Green, Daniel Alfredson. Some people have mentioned, there's no Ty Domi, but Max Domi's there. So you got a lot of familiarity comparisons, but like you said, whole different era of hockey. Um, I believe it was Chris Johnston's piece, or maybe Julie McKenzie's. I was reading both in the Athletic today, and they mentioned that Toronto used to be the very gritty team back then, and Ottawa was more of the high skill team. And now almost the roles have reversed, right? You look at guys like Brady Tkachuk, Ridley Gregg, Nick Cousins, and Ottawa has kind of that rat style game to them that I guess Toronto was known for back then. So uh, I guess all this to ask you, what are your thoughts on kind of that change in nature of the Ottawa Senators and how that stacks up to a highly skilled Toronto team?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think like the Senators teams of yesteryear had like the highly skilled forwards. I think it was Marian Hossa, Daniel Alfredson, Martin Havlat, um, and like Wade Redden. they had like a bunch of highly skilled players that, were it's a different era. Like just if you want to call it like refereeing and the way the games are called, it lent itself to Toronto style of play. There's just like a lot of penalties weren't called. Um, and it was that was the narrative. That was the narrative in those series is that Ottawa couldn't match up physically with Toronto, and then it just Ottawa was that highly skilled team that was probably ahead of the cap era, the modern cap era, where it's like the game got faster, smaller, and more skilled. And I think like Ottawa was kind of like the precursor to that. Um, but yeah, the roles kind of reversed, and I think like Ottawa's still a highly skilled team. I think like Ottawa loses skill and potential at a number of critical positions, but at the same time, they have elements that it's going to give Toronto a bunch of headaches. I think it's going to be a hard series for Toronto, irrespective of whether they win or lose. I think this series is going to be it's going to take a lot out of them. Like you're going to face Brady Tkachuk 5, 6, 7 times in the series. You're going to face Ridley Gregg, who will drive you nuts in a one game set, let alone 6 or 7. So. I think Ottawa's just got a bunch of players. There's a guy on every line who can score. There's a guy on every line who is going to agitate the shit out of you, and it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. I think it's going to rejuvenate a rivalry that's been dormant for way too long.
And one of the topics that's been raised, considering the fact that Toronto fans often really fill the Canadian Tire Center at home here, uh, is playoff tickets and the availability of them, how the organization is trying to minimize how many Leafs fans get their hands on these tickets. And I think, the thought process has been good, but the execution has left a lot of Sens fans kind of upset or maybe just frustrated with the whole process of this. And, do you think the restrictions on the selling of the tickets and, releasing them kind of slowly to season ticket holders and then to Sens insiders and then to the general public will really help limit how many blue and white jerseys we see in the stands come playoff time?
I think it ultimately comes down to the season seat members. I don't think it has anything to do with the time to release or anything of that nature. Even limiting the resale online, if you really want to sell your tickets, you're going to find mechanisms to do that. You don't need an online option to do that. But I think like for Ottawa, I think you're always going to have your corporate business owners who will give tickets to clients who are Leafs fans potentially. And I think like when it comes to getting Leafs fans out of the building, I think like the pressure has to fall on the season seat members and businesses like prioritize giving them to Senators fans because like the common refrain that you hear from fans is like, oh, I hate going to Leafs games because there's so many Leafs fans. Well, the only way to curb that is to stop giving them tickets. And that's what it comes down to. Don't sell your tickets to Leafs fans. Sell them or give them to your friends you know are Senators fans. And it's until you get like that grassroots initiative of packing the barn with Sens fans, it's not going to change, unfortunately. But I think what we're seeing in the last couple of days, like Kevin Lee is, it's kind of like spurred some of it. Is let's get Sens tickets in the hands of Sens fans, and it's a grassroots season seat member initiative, and we'll see how it looks when the building opens up on probably I'm assuming Thursday next week. So it should be interesting. Should be interesting. But it's a storyline. It'll never go away. And I think like I know it's like just not an Ottawa centric issue. I think like anywhere the Leafs go, whether it's Buffalo, Montreal, out west in Canada, they just invade arenas, and Toronto's the mecca of Canada in terms of population and everything else. So it's not surprising.
Fair enough. Now, I want to actually go back to the on ice product. You mentioned Ridley Gregg, Brady Kachuk, the grittiness they bring, but also the skill the Sens have. And one thing that I think could be a bit of a conversation going forward is the goaltending. Linus Olmark has been pretty solid, of course, but Toronto has had a pretty solid tandem in Stolars and Wall. So do you think that goaltending could play more of a factor than maybe people have talked about going into the series?
No, I think like when it comes to postseason hockey, I think people don't appreciate how much luck goes into it. It's such a small sample size. It's like a couple bad bounces can absolutely ruin a franchise in the postseason. It's just comes down to nothing other than luck. And I think like there's so much parity in hockey at 5-on-5 that like if you don't have good special teams and if you don't have good goaltending for a small like 3, 4 games in a row, like you're cooked. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And I think to the Senators' credit, they found a goaltender who can actually stop the puck consistently. I think like, he got hurt in the second game of the season, Linus Ullmark, and when he returned, he wasn't playing at a very high level. Certainly not what the Senators envisioned when they extended him. But that said, from November 27th on, when he went on that really hot run where he stopped like 96.5% of the shots, from that November 27th mark on, he has been like the fourth best goaltender in terms of save percentage. I think the only guys ahead of him are like Vasilevsky, Hellebuck, and Darcy Kemper. So like very strong Vezina candidate, nominated goaltenders. And that's what they paid for. That's what they got, and he's given them a chance to win every night since that like stretch in November, and that's what you paid for. And I think like in an Allmark versus Stolar series, like Stolar's has been unbelievable in the last like month, but I think like Ottawa's got a goaltender who can match that save for save, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of pressure on Allmark, especially without like Jeremy Swayman in the background. Like he's the guy, he's the de facto guy. There is no alternative. If the Senators are going to go anywhere and make some noise, like he's going to be at the root of it. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform.
And he was one of the players that Steve Stais targeted at the trade deadline last season, ended up bringing in the offseason, going into the summer. And the Sens ended up adding some veteran experience of guys who had either won Stanley Cups or had done well in the postseason or had at least just got a ton of playoff experience. And that's, guys like Amadio, guys like Perron, and they've really helped this team when it comes to depth. Obviously, Perron, a lot of stuff out of the gate that kept him off the ice, and then struggled with injury coming back. But now he's kind of started to find a groove. And do you think that these guys with the playoff experience that they have are going to be able to lead the rest of the core of the Sens players? You look at Brady Tkachuk, Thomas Chabot, who have been in the league a number of years and have never seen the playoffs. Are they going to be able to help out with that inexperience and really try to drag this team to maybe, won't get ahead of myself, but maybe a series win or at least a longer first round?
They have to wait for the postseason to see like the benefits of adding these guys. I think like even just in talking to David Perrault, like one of the things he emphasized in terms of just like stick work, whether it's him or Ramadio, those guys, just because of their stick work, their body positioning, their willingness to win battles one on one along the wall, like that, when people see that, it permeates a culture. And it just like if you see two or three or four of those guys doing that consistently, winning those like micro battles within the context of a full game, it inspires the other guys to like start saying, "Oh shit, like we could be doing the same thing." And I think that's kind of permeated the group. Like I've had conversations with other people on other podcasts, and I can't recall a team that had as good as sticks, or like I can't recall a version of the Senators where like the guys had as good as sticks as they've had this season. I think like their stick positioning, their work, winning battles like lifting sticks, tying up sticks, winning loose puck battles along the wall has been phenomenal. And I think it's a large reason for their success. And I think that starts with guys like Perron and Madio that you mentioned, who were brought in from like winning culture teams in Vegas and St. Louis, where they've won cups. And when you see guys like do that consistently, do it well, I think it's just like guys pick up on that, on those habits, and they said, "Hey, we can do that too."
Now, one of the guys who I wanted to touch on is another player who has a lot of playoff experience, albeit maybe not some recently, and that's Claude Giroux. And he is a guy who hasn't won a cup yet, but has been to the playoffs many times, has fought a lot of battles over the years with, the Pittsburgh Penguins mainly. And, how do you think a guy like that, he's obviously a pending free agent. Um, how do you think that he will contribute to the club in the postseason, especially, heading into the twilight years of his career?
You hope. I think the hope is that it gives them a bump. I think with like a few players whose games have kind of plateaued a little bit in the last little, I don't know, couple weeks. It gives them a bump. I think like you can go past Claude Giroux. I think you could say like Dylan Cousins, for example. I thought was playing at a really high level when he was acquired from Buffalo. I think a lot of that's like adrenaline, and then once that adrenaline wears off, it's about playing within a structure, playing to the best of your ability, and not kind of going through lulls. And I think he experienced a little bit of a lull, though he's been playing well in the last week. I think like getting through the end of the regular season and getting that first game of the playoffs is going to give a shot of adrenaline to like all of these guys, especially like a guy like Closure who wants it so badly. To a guy like Cousins who's experienced first taste of the postseason. He's coming from a bad bad situation in Buffalo and arriving here. And like all those guys want to do well. I think it, like to a person, I think there's so much enthusiasm within that group and that within that room right now, where there's Tom Shabbat, Brady Kachuk, Giroux, Pinto, Batherson. Like there's just, I think there's like a quiet confidence and swagger to them as well. And I just feel like this, just making it to this point and just experiencing this opportunity is going to be a huge, huge boon for this organization. I think there's going to be so much adrenaline going through those guys, and they're going to want to like represent themselves well and take their games to another level, and it's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait to see how they perform.
You mentioned the quiet confidence, swagger of the guys in the locker room. What's the sense that you've gotten just from, talking to players, talking with other media members? What's the sense that you're getting from the locker room as they head into this playoff series?
I would say like throughout the whole year, you like even in November, they lost five. They dropped 5 games in a row. I think they lost. It was 4-3 to Vancouver, that fifth game in a row, where you could hear like a pin drop in the room. But it's like, and I've said this on other shows before. It's like that was like the only time this season where like you could notice like a significant change with the group. But like the next day, you talk to the guys, and it's like not like it's just a regular day. And I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of it, but it seems like the disposition of the group has been really positive all year. I think they recognized early in the season, even though the results weren't necessarily there for them, that they were playing good within their system and structure, and they were doing a lot of good things. It's just like they weren't scoring goals. Like their shooting percentage wasn't good. They were creating chances, they just weren't burying them. And then once they finally started getting saves and winning close games, I think everything is kind of snowballed, and you can kind of see that swagger and measured response from them. And that's carried throughout the course of the season. I don't think they get too high. I don't think they get too low, but there's just they're like quietly confident. I'd say like their disposition hasn't changed much throughout the course of the season. I think like there's a belief within that group that they like, regardless of the situation, that they can hold their own and play competitive games. And I think that just mentally, as we've seen in years previous, like from those November stretches where they drop a number of games and would get behind the 8 ball and just kind of unravel from there. Like that doesn't exist this year. Like they found ways to win games, even when they had like small losing streaks. They find a way to win a game in New Jersey, for example, before they go to Buffalo. And had they dropped that New Jersey game, all of a sudden that losing streak becomes 4 or 5 games, and then you start having like doubts and conversations about that. But like they haven't allowed that to happen this year, which would have happened all the time in previous seasons. So I think it's a credit to the group within that room. I think it's a credit to the coaching staff, and I think it's just like they believe in their structure and their ability to come back and close games. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that labor right now.
And the final month this season, they were without their captain and Brady Kachuk. There was a lot of talk about what his health would be going into the postseason. Ann Lauer was on TSN 1200 and said, "Hey, Brady could have probably played 5 games ago, but as you can guess, they've clinched. They want to rest up players, especially Brady Kachuk, dealing with a couple of undisclosed things." And there's also been a lot of talk about Brady being built for the playoffs. Cyril Leader also did, a media interview, and he mentioned that Brady Kachuk in the playoffs would be unleashed. And with the player that Brady Kachuk is, the confidence he exudes, wears his heart on his sleeve when he's on the ice out there. How do you think that a player like him will perform, and what his presence will be? 500 games plus in the NHL without playoffs. This is his chance, and what do you think's going to happen with him come playoff time?
Well, first and foremost, I hope he's healthy. Like you don't want to see a nagging injury. I think like being caution or taking caution with him during the last few weeks of this regular season is like, I think it's the best thing that could have happened. I think like coming out of a Four Nations break, I think he was exhausted. He didn't have days off. He played a ton of emotional hockey during that stretch, got hurt, and came back after missing 2 games, I think, after the break. And like he was playing at a high level, but like you could tell he was bothered by something. And I think like giving him these like 2 or 3 weeks down the stretch where you can afford him that time to heal, it's good. I think it can only benefit them. And I like he's such a difference maker. I think in terms of his physicality, his goal scoring, his willingness to drive the net, and just do the little things in the offensive zone to help this team sustain zone time and pressure. And he's a leader. He's everything that you want in a captain. And the team, he's the heartbeat of the team, and the team follows along with him. And I think you saw how he was during the Four Nations break. I think people are going to hold him up to that standard. They want to see that version of Brady Kachuk play. And against Toronto, I think every reason for that to want to come out. So it's going to be exciting. I'm thrilled for the player. I'm thrilled for the organization. We've been waiting, I guess, 7 years for this moment with him. So it's been a long time coming. I think you're going to see. I hope you're going to see the best of Brady Tkachuk.
I'm very excited. I can't actually believe that we're talking about playoffs.
And
We
it's been a
started,
long time coming, Matt. It's been a long time
yeah.
coming, man.
No, we started the podcast in February 2020. So we will finally be able to actually do, post playoff game episodes and whatnot. And that boggles my mind.
It's weird. It's weird because like when I was growing up and I was a kid, like the first 4 years of this franchise existence, like that felt like an eon. Like it felt so long. And this is twice the length of that. Like it's absolutely incredible that it's taken this long, but it's weird because it feels like it like time flies. Like at the same time, like as you get older, it feels like time flies a little bit and time gets away from you. But um, yeah, it's been a long time coming. I'm so happy for the fans. I'm so happy for the players, happy for the staff within that organization who worked for the team during some really dark days. But like we're good employees, worked hard, we're good people, and they're finally seeing the rewards for it now. And yeah, just thrilled for people like Cyril Leader, the organization, the coaching staff, especially the coaching staff, because I think like there's a lot of pressure coming in on the coaching staff to like change the dynamics, change the culture. Yeah, I know we throw the word like culture around like pretty liberally when talking about sports and stuff, but like, like DJ Smith came in, Jacques Martin came in, and it's like, okay, guys, we need to play good defense. It's easy to say it. It's another thing to like get the guys to buy in and execute. And for whatever reason, Travis Green pushed all the right buttons this year, and the players bought in, and you can tell they're playing a much more tighter, structured system, and it's benefited them considerably.
Yeah, and it's still funny to think that Jacques Martin is also with the organization again. So, you know, what was once old is new again. And a lot of familiar faces as the Sens head into this playoff series. And hey, maybe if the Sens need that boost, they get Alfie, sign him to a contract, plop him in on that power play. You never know.
Couldn't help
But
that. Couldn't hurt the second unit.
yeah, but yeah, I wanted to pivot a little bit and talk to you about, this year in particular is your first year actually getting to spend more time as a media member. And I wanted to ask you about that experience, and especially the season that it's been must have been an exciting time for you. But just your, starting off the beginning of the season, getting your media credentials, getting to do, all this stuff with the hockey news. How has that been for you?
Oh, it's good. At the beginning of the season, I was always like a little bit apprehensive because everyone there has been there for, well, whether it's like a year, like Alex Adams or more, or like everyone's experience, they're professionals. Like this is my second job. Like I think most people understand that. So like I just want to go in, not stepping on toes, don't disrupt what's already working for a lot of people. I just, I didn't not that I wanted to be a wallflower for the first little bit, but like I was encouraged just to kind of like for the first little while, just stay back, kind of learn the layout of the land, and then slowly put yourself out there a little bit more. And I've kind of tried to adhere to that as much as I can, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think like the players, well, I should say, I'll start with the staff. Like first and foremost, I can't thank Ian Mendes and Sylvain Saint Laurent, Aaron Campbell enough. Like those three have been so accommodating. Like any requests or questions or anything that I've had, they've been on top of it, and their feedback and their just the collaboration and just the willingness to help, not just myself but others across the media spectrum with the organization is just it's such a welcome change from previous years where like people like myself would never have an opportunity to do what I've done. So it's such a welcome change. And like we talked about people that you're happy for. I think like first and foremost, I'm probably happiest for Ian and Sly to like get into that field and have the team experience success in their first year in their respective roles. So I think it's huge. And then to the players, like everyone has been fantastic. Like there haven't been too many moments where I felt like I've stepped on toes or asked a stupid question or like I've always felt at ease. The players been super welcoming. I haven't felt out of place at all, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been so much fun. I can't thank guys like Ian and Sylvain enough for that. It's been great. And Steve Warren too gave me the opportunity to write for the platform as well. Without Steve asking me if I wanted to contribute, then I never would have had a platform. Probably never would have had an opportunity to do this. So thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve's great. It's actually been too long since we've had him on. We'll have to hit him up again. But he's actually been, since his TSN 1200 days, the guy who's always been against the blue team. So, have you had any chats with Steve about the blue team and the Sens playing them in the playoffs?
Not too much. A little bit. Like I think I might be traveling to Toronto to experience the playoffs for games one, two, and five, if it goes five. But I think I'm going to be traveling. Hopefully, cross my fingers. I sent out some emails today to follow up and see where it's at, but I'm hoping to be traveling and following the team day to day, and I'm excited for that. But yeah, like Steve. He's been doing it for so long, and he's been such a like an instrumental part of the sports media landscape here in Ottawa. Like he was reminiscing on Twitter. I saw like his tweets yesterday, I think it was, where he was talking about everyone's kind of texting him, firing messages about his like blue team elimination watch and the Battle of Ontario stuff that he had from like yesteryear when he was doing the morning program on 1200.
Yeah,
And it's good. It's like even like like Wayne Scanlon. I was having conversations with him at the rink, and it's like like there's a lot of younger people on the beat in Ottawa now, and that's not a knock to them or the work that they do and their youthful. I don't want to say inexperience, but they're just like their tenure, like they're just young and they weren't around for the Battle of Ontario. Like that's the funny thing, like Matt, we're talking about it. It's like there's a whole generation of Sens fan that hasn't experienced like a postseason yet. Like there's kids in there, like young teens, 10 to young teens who can't remember what it was like to watch a playoff game. So I'm not surprised that there isn't that connection. I was talking to Wayne Scanlon about that today. I'm like, with the exception of him and Bruce, and like obviously they covered those events live back then. With the exception of those two, there's nobody writing about the team anymore that has that experience and that history to them. And I think that's like a spot of Senators lore that you need in the print form these days.
for sure. And, it seemed like when I was first kind of going through my, I guess, initial years of being like a big Sens fan, it was like, oh, we didn't make the playoffs this year, but we'll make it next year because that was kind of the theme. They wouldn't make it one year, they'd make it the next year. You can look at that stretch, and especially in like I believe 2010 to 2017, like make the playoffs, don't make the playoffs, maybe make the playoffs a couple years in a row. Oh, okay, one year with no playoffs. So you kind of take it for granted, but I believe it was Cyril Leader who's like, in the early 2000s, we took playoffs for granted. It's like we
Hmm.
can't do that anymore. And he's like, I hope our organization and our players and whatnot that they don't take it for granted either. And I think you can see the excitement in the market and knowing that despite half the league getting into the playoffs every year, um, there's a lot of parity, and you never know what could happen from one year to the next. Look at the New York Rangers, for example. President's Trophy. Now they're not even in the playoffs. So I
And I
think
think like not to cut you off, but like a
no, go for it.
closure said the same thing, right? I think it was the second year in the league where he went to the Cup Finals, and then, or maybe it was just the Eastern Conference Finals. Anyways, he went deep in the postseason and hasn't really been back that often since. So you kind of once you hit a certain level, you just kind of anticipate like, oh, okay, now that we're here, we're here, we can get comfortable, and it's not the case. I think it's such a grind. There is so much parity, rosters overturned all the time, and things can change in a hurry. So that's the important thing for Ottawa. Don't take anything for granted. Leave it all on the table, and just get after it come probably Sunday night. I'm assuming it starts on Sunday.
I hope so. I can't wait any longer. It's been too long. Gonna ask you maybe a couple more and then we'll call it a day. Before we started recording, we talked a little bit about how this year you've actually gotten to be someone who fills out the Hockey Writers Association ballots for the awards for the NHL this season. And I just wanted to ask you how your experience has been with that, and are you comfortable with your picks? Or are you still questioning a few that you have to
I
make?
have until Friday. I actually submitted my Masterton ballot today. Um, so yeah, so I did that. So I'm chipping away, but it's like I find for each of the major awards, so I'm voting on like the Hart, Norris, Calder, Lady Byng, and Selke. And the All-Star teams, like so you vote for a second, third team All-Stars, and then the All-Rookie team. The stuff I'm laboring over isn't necessarily like I can find four guys easily for each category, but then it's just the slotting, and then it's like that internal debate that I'm having. Like even with the Hart, like you know. it's like it depends on your philosophy. Like I think like Connor Hellebuck has arguably had, well, not arguably, he definitely has had the most valuable season. But goaltenders have their own awards. So like I think he's the de facto Vezina winner, without question. But the question is like, does his play warrant the heart? And I think like letter of the law, the best goalie every year is arguably the most valuable player to their team. So I'm having a tough time marrying those facts, but at the same time, it's like he's been so much better than his peers. Like Vasilevsky is probably the number two, and he's been like statistically so much better than Vasilevsky. Like how can you not consider the year that he's had? And I think that's kind of what I'm debating. And then like you get to a guy like Draisaitl, well, he's insulated by McDavid. You get to a Nathan McKinnon, and it's like, well, he's insulated by Cale Makar. And then you look at like what Rantanen has done since leaving Colorado, where he's kind of floundered on two very good teams, whether it's in Dallas or Carolina. You're like, man, maybe McKinnon is the guy that like kind of stirs the drink a little bit more than you want to give him credit for. And then like Nikita Kucherov's had an unbelievable year in the absence of like Steven Stamkos. Like they've made significant changes in Tampa and he's still played at an incredibly high level. And then for my fifth pick, I'm kind of laboring between several players. It's just like I think Jack Eichel's in the mix. Maybe you can make an argument for like a Nick Suzuki. Like there's so much that goes into it, and at the same time, I'm trying to take this very seriously. I know, regardless of what I pick, like there's going to be something that comes after something that I did. So like I'm just trying to like cross my T's, dot my I's, and make sure I'm doing a good job. But it's like I think like the Hart Trophy is probably the hardest one. The Selkie is not easy. Finding a fifth person for the Calder like it's a bit of a chore, but I feel pretty comfortable with most of my picks. It's just like the placement of the guys, and then who's the fifth person for each category is kind of just like, did I overlook someone? Did I leave someone out? And I'm trying to be as diligent as possible. Like I'm reaching out to like players on the Senators, other media members in markets where I'm like kind of debating the player. Like I was considering Zach Bolduc as like a fifth ballot guy for the Calder. So I reached out to like Jeremy Rutherford from St. Louis just to be like, hey, I'm considering this. Is that crazy? And you get some feedback from the guys who watch these guys consistently. And same with like the Salky. Like I'm trying to talk to the director of analytics from the Kings just to make sure I'm like if I nominate a forward for like best defensive forward from the Kings, it's actually the organization believes it's the best player. you know, just trying to like cover my ass and yeah, just reaching out to bunch of former players, bunch of media types, people who are working for organizations, just make sure I'm doing an okay job. So we'll see how it goes, but I got a little bit of work left to do. So we'll see. But I think most of it's pretty straightforward, but some of it yeah, some of it's just a matter of choice. I think the Selkie's hard because I feel like that's an analytically driven conversation, and a lot of people have really strong views on analytics, and there's also a lot of like name recognition and like vote. I think there's a lot of voter fatigue too.
Right.
So like Barkov, for example, has won it like several years, and it's like, wow, do we nominate him again? And then you're seeing a lot of support for Sam Reinhart online. It's like, well, Sam Reinhart plays on Barkov's line, so is it Barkov doing most of the work, or is it Sam Reinhart benefiting from that? And I don't know. There's a lot of like conversations that you have to have about that kind of stuff. So it's interesting, but I'm trying to take it seriously and do a good job.
And you can't just write Bergeron anymore. There's no easy
Yeah,
out.
that's it too. That's it too. But there's some interesting names in the mix for sure.
Well, I appreciate the insight because it's obviously a very time consuming process, I would imagine, especially when you need to get feedback and recommendations and all that from everyone. So cool that you're doing that and congrats. That's cool milestone, I think, as a writer to get that honor to do that. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, I got to go back to, Battle of Ontario to finish this episode off. Are you confident enough or are you not willing to give a prediction on what you think the series outcome will be? Up to you. I'll leave it in your hands.
No, I'm comfortable saying it. Like I think, I mentioned this on Coming in Hot this morning. I think Ottawa's got a great chance to win this in 6 or 7 games. I think I was looking at Toronto's numbers post February 1st, and it's like the shooting and goal metrics are lower than what they have been. Um, like Toronto's got like the 32nd best Corsi since February 1st, which is terrible. So what's obviously they've won a lot of hockey games since February 1st. So like what's the reason for their success? And it's like, oh, it's all shooting percentage and save percentage. Like we talked about Anthony Stolarz like briefly early on. Like he's been lights out and fantastic. Wolves played really strong hockey behind him, and they're getting a lot of saves. But like as a team, they're not playing particularly strong. And I think like a lot of their success has been predicated on the performance of the goaltenders. And, I don't, I think Austin Matthews is a fantastic player. I think Mitch Martin is a fantastic player. I think William Nylander is a fantastic player. John Tavares can elevate his game at the right times and be a very good player still at his age. They have strong players. And I like some of the moves that they made this year to address the blue line. I think that Brandon Carlo's fantastic. I think Chris Tanev a really good addition. But at the same time, they're also missing McCabe potentially, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson's out. So they're missing two of their top four defensemen. And I just don't know if they have the quality of depth up front to match Ottawa. And I don't know if they're as diverse in what components they have up front to match Ottawa's four lines. I think like there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Shane Pinto line to shut down Austin Matthews line. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Dylan Cousins to elevate his game to get the most out of Drake Batherson. I think there's going to be pressure on Tim Stützle to go to the middle of the ice, don't settle and be a perimeter player in the postseason, like go to the hard areas, do what he's been doing the last few games. I think the last week of the season where he's been constantly going in the middle of the ice and shooting the puck hard and having results. I think he had like 5 shots last night, which hasn't happened at all this season. I think that bodes well. I think Thomas Chabot's playing at a high level. We haven't really talked about the blue line at all. I think there's a lot of pressure on Chabot and Jensen to play at a high level. Like since they were the best pairing for this team in the first 30, 35 games of the season. Since the calendar year switched on July 1st or July 1st, on January 1st, him and Jensen haven't been particularly strong at all. And I think like he's playing really, really, really good hockey right now. He's arguably been Ottawa's best defenseman over the last like 2 weeks. If he continues to play at that level, and if Nick Jensen shows that his injury isn't going to hamper him too much in the postseason, and they get results off that second pairing, this is going to be a really tough out for Toronto. And I think like we talked about the physicality, the grinding, the sandpaperness. Like Toronto, irrespective of the score, Toronto's going to hate these games. Like the Ottawa is just they're gonna linger, they're gonna be around, they're gonna punish Toronto every shift. They're gonna make them pay. And I think like Toronto's not that they're a soft team, I just don't think they match up as much physically as Ottawa. I think like Ottawa's just got different elements and dynamics, and I think they can play a number of different ways. And I think they're going to give Toronto, whether or not Toronto wins the series or not, I think Ottawa's going to give them a good run for the money. But I like Ottawa in 6 or 7 games.
I think I'm on board with that, Graham. No bias whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like if they were playing Florida or something, maybe I'd be concerned. Like if Florida was fully healthy. But I mean that's a conversation for the second round, right? So you hope if Ottawa finds a way to squeak through Toronto, that Tampa Bay and Florida just beat the snot out of each other and then leave themselves a little bit vulnerable for that second round. But Ottawa's got to get there too. So I'm hopeful. I think like it's just gonna be fun. I like not that like I think like Ottawa's got to gotta like give a good representation of themselves. I think like if Ottawa got swept in 4 games, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of a waste of it. I know they got into the postseason, but you're always thinking like, okay, that's a bit of a waste of the postseason. You don't want them to get in. You want them to play competitively and have a little bit of modest success in the postseason as a stepping stone, as a foundational building block for the future. Um, and I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that they can do it in the first round here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Graham. As always, thank you so much. For anybody who is watching or listening, we'll put it in the description where you can find Graham's articles at the Hockey News. But Graham, anything you want to plug before we call it a day?
No, just check out my stuff on the Hockey News. Follow along for the postseason. You can also find me usually Monday to Thursday on Coming in Hot when I'm not on shift. So, yeah, yeah. Matt, thanks so much for having me on, man. Had a blast. I'm
No
sad
problem.
to have missed Matt and Bennett, but hopefully I'll have a chance to touch base with you guys during the playoffs.
Love that. Awesome. Thanks a lot,
All right.
Graham.
Yeah, no worries. Take care.